What's up, Kick and Bass gang? It's Mr. Skrillex, just played my remix, no big deal. And today we're making a little grimy house banger that goes a little something like this.
If you a real OG, you can ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party. To the after party.
Yes, sir.
To the after party. If you a real OG, you can ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party.
If you guys want the samples and presets from this project file, we just dropped the Kick and Bass sample pack, Alchemist Volume 2, and it has about 4 gigabytes of sauce in there. And if you want to take a deeper look at the project file, check out the Patreon. Links are in the description below. Let's get it. All right, let's get a full listen here.
If you a real OG, you can ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party. 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 Going straight from the club to the after party. Party, 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 party. If you a real OG, you can ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party. To the after party. To the after party.
Yes, sir.
To the after party. If you a real OG, you can ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party.
All right, let's start with the Kick and Bass because they're absolutely huge. So for the kick, we just got a punchier kick from Alchemist Volume 2. This time around, I tried to keep the samples more organized just so you guys have a better starting point. So we have kicks 909, kicks acoustic, kicks full, punchy kicks. These are more like hip hop style kicks. And then we got top kicks. So this is just one of the punchy kicks. Then I just shortened up the envelope a little bit with fades just to make it fit with the 808 better. And then we have a little duck at around 500 just to get rid of some of the knockiness. For the bass, it's just an 808 one shot from Alchemist Volume 2, following like an offbeat pattern. So it's just this one bar phrase repeating over and over. And then I have a little bit of a boost around 200 just to give it some more girth. And then below that, I have an accent bass that goes on top of the 808 hits just to give it more impact. And this is just an Alchemist Volume 2 bass preset. And again, I tried to keep these even more organized than Volume 1 just so it's easier to sort through. So this is just an FM donk, and we have FM from B up 7 semitones, and then the envelope is on the filter cutoff just to give it that knockiness. So all together. And then for the group processing, we just have a saturator on soft sine mode just to give it some beef. Mega beef. Let's check out the drop synths next. So the first main synth you hear is the drop donks. And these are just samples from Alchemist Volume 2 in the root note. So we're in D. And then I have a bunch of group processing on here just so I could stack a bunch of donks on each other and see how big of a sound I could get. So we have with none of the processing and then with it. So we have a little bit of overdrive just to add some more crunch. Just distorting the mids here where we want the presence of the sound. Then we have everything thick OTT at about 50%. And this is also in the sample pack as well. So this just makes everything enormous. After that, we have an EQ8 just scooping out any of the lows because we have the 808 there. And then boosting some of the highs here for clarity. And then after that, we have a reverb rack. And this is just sort of like a reverb send setup just to give it some air. After that, we just have LFO tool with a little bit of ducking for the kick, and then a saturator just to make sure nothing's coming out of the channel too hot. For the first 8 at the drop, it's just the one donk sample. And then for the second part, we have 4 of them stacked on top of each other. So the first one is going to be a donk preset from Alchemist Volume 2. And this one's just super crunchy, just adding a lot of highs to it, and we have an overdrive after it as well. Then we have the original donk. How many times is it going to say donk? And then we have a third donk down here just to give it more mids. So all together. Then for the response to the donks, we have the break synth, but it's only playing the end of the phrase. So in the breakdown, it goes. And in the drop, we just replace the first two notes of the melody with the donk, and then have the melody play as a response sound. For the drop synth, it's another Alchemist Volume 2 preset. Key thing here is the pulse waves and then the detune to give it that sort of dissonant feel. So then we got OTT in the effects just to bring it all out. A little bit of distortion, and then cutting out the lows with an EQ. Then in post, we have overdrive, just again to give it presence where we want it. Then OTT gain comped, which is just regular OTT, but with 10 dB of gain, just because OTT kind of reduces about 10 dB of gain. And then I just pulled up the middle band just to give it more presence as well. Then EQ8 just to take out what we don't want, and then limiter just to get rid of some of the transients. And then again with the reverb rack just to fill in some space. And then the last thing for the drop synths is another donk. So many donks, dude. But this one just has a bunch of reverb on it just to give it a big impact on the drop. And then the last thing for the drop synths is going to be these mud pie stabs. So in Alchemist Volume 2, we have a section that is just a bunch of resample mud pies, and this is just like minutes of me fucking around with different sort of sounds. So we have a bunch of different sounds that you guys can mess with, and then the theory behind it is you could just drag in the whole sample right here and then shorten it to how long you want it. And from there, you could just do Shift, Option, Drag until you get the sound that you want. So yeah, all day, baby. So in the first half of the drop, we have one iteration of the sound. And then in the second half, I just dragged it around until I found another spot that sounded good. All right, let's check out the breakdown.
If you a real OG, you could ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party. 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 Going straight from the club to the after party. Party, 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 party. If you a real OG, you could ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party.
All right, first things first, we have the vocal. So as a pre-sweep sort of thing, we have it play before the breakdown hits, and it's just the full thing into a low dub of it. And then on the low dub, we just have an echo that turns on for the last word, and then a reverb throw just to lead it into the breakdown. And for the breakdown, we just have to the after party repeating, but with a low dub.
To the after party. To the after party.
For the build, I just doubled the timing of the vocal, and then I put a 30-second note auto pan on it.
Going straight from the club to the after party.
Just to give it a cool effect. We have an OTT after that just to bring it out, and then I tamed some of the highs with the high band, and then just cutting out the lows with an EQ8. Then for the buildup, it just repeats.
Party, 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 party.
And then I pitch the whole thing down an octave, the first 4 bars, and then another octave in the next bar, and then back up before the pre-drop hits. And then we have a washout that's automating up just to drain it out.
Party, 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 party.
Let's check out these effects. So first thing is going to be this white noise effect. which is an Alchemist preset. And this is one of those one knob presets. So all you have to do for these is just automate the knob for as long as you want the effect. And this just gives you just more control over the length of it. So I just have it sweeping down. And then we have an washout automating up just to wash it out. Below that, we have an impact. Then we have a cymbal transition. And below that, we have just the crash part of the transition with 100% delay on it, just to give it some more space in the next section. Below that, we have an atmosphere in the root note, just to give everything a nice little bed to sit on. Then we have the sound off effects. So this happens on every bar, and it's just a detuned saw with a bunch of reverb and delay, and then the pitch goes from low to high just to make it sound like an alarm. And in the buildup, we have 2 more effects. So we have this one knob square laser thing. And then a triangle wave as a riser. And both of these you could just control with the knob. For the break synths, we got a couple things going on. So we have the main synth melody, and it's just root note and the minor second. Just an Alchemist preset. Then we have a standard multiband comp just to tame some of the highs, and again with the reverb to give it some space. After the first octave plays of this, I duplicated it and dropped it down an octave just to give it some variation. Then we have another preset below that from Alchemist that's just giving it some more space in the low end. And for these, I just really just duplicate the track because as you can see, it has the same processing. And then I just flip through presets until I find something that sounds good. And they all sound good because I made them. Then finally for the break synths, we have them come in with no reverb in the pre-drop. And then I switched the sound up just to give it a transition into the drop sounds. And this is just another one of those big donk sounds. So sort of just designed like an 808, and then we have a big overdrive on it just to give it some more girth. For the percussion group, we just have a build snare loop. Then a clap that leads into the turnaround sections.
If you a real OG, you could ride with me.
And then a clap fill that happens at the end of every 8 on the drop. No processing on any of these. For the cymbal group, we just have a top loop. And I have a little bit of filter automation in the breakdown for this, just to add some tension. And then all the cymbals just come in after the first 4 of the drop with an additional open hat. And then we just have an overdrive on both the cymbals just to give them the same sort of tone. Yeah, overdrive is sauce for cymbals because it could just make them fit way better in your mix. Then we have a little bit of LFO tool just to give it some sidechain. And finally for the master, we have 2 dB of gain reduction and then an EQ8 that turns on that filters out some of the highs and shelves some of them out as well. And this is super subtle. As you guys can see, it's just going to 16 kilohertz and then just dipping about 1 dB just to give the drop more impact. And it's super important when you're doing this stuff to turn the EQ8 on and off when you're not using it, because if you're filtering out some of the lows, sometimes it can mess with your phase. So just only turn it on in the buildup. Let's do it one more time for the people.
Real OG, you could ride with me. We going straight from the club to the after party.
All right, gang, that's going to do it for the track breakdown. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe so we could take over the world. And if you want to check out Alchemist Volume 2 or the project file, links are in the description below. Peace.